GC MMA guys, we're going to be bringing you our full card picks for Ankalaev versus Walker 2.
The first fight on the card, we've got Josh Van versus Felipe Bunes. I don't know about you, but I'm going to have to go with Josh Van in this one. He's got that age advantage. He's young. He's a prospect. I feel like the UFC is trying to push him. And I really don't think Felipe Bunes is that good. Like, went on his Tapology, watched a few of his older fights, and he's got some good BJJ, but I just feel like Josh Van has the better boxing, and he's going to put the pressure on him, and he's probably going to crumble under that pressure, Felipe Bunes.
Yeah, so I don't know a whole bunch about Felipe Bunes. Can't say I've seen him fight before in any of the other leagues or anything, but I have seen Joshua Van fight twice so far inside of the UFC. He's gone 3 rounds both times. I think that he's battle tested. I think that he's gotten hurt, came back, proven that he's pretty well rounded for a young guy, proven he can take a punch. So just for that, because I know about him and I don't know about the other guy, I'm just gonna have to go ahead and lean Joshua Van as well.
Yeah.
For the next fight, we have Nicholas Moda versus Tom Nolan. Once again, Tom Nolan's not really a guy that I've paid attention to. I mean, we doing our research in this card, obviously. He's an impressive fighter coming off a couple of knockouts in the regional scene. My reason for my pick on this one, going Tom Nolan, would have to be more because of Nicholas Moda than Tom Nolan. I don't think that that guy is. I don't think that he belongs inside of the UFC, honestly. He's getting knocked out by guys to the likes of Jim Miller, Trey Ogden. I think that says a lot, honestly, and his one win inside of the UFC, as far as I remember, is against Cameron Van Camp, and that guy's just around to get knocked out. So
they just use him to prop up other fighters at this point.
I think that Tom Nolan looks like an exciting prospect for the UFC. They're giving him kind of a layup here, and I think that Tom Nolan's going to get this done early.
Yeah, I've also got Tom Nolan in this. He's got a bigger frame too than Nicholas Moda, and I don't think Nicholas Moda is going to like that when he's eating those jabs from that reach. His chin is gone at this point. He's going out in this fight. That's my prediction. All right, up next we've got Weston Wilson versus John Silva. Now, you guys might not know a lot about John Silva, but he will fuck up Weston Wilson. This is not going to be pretty for him. Weston Wilson, I also don't think he belongs in the UFC. This won't be too good for him. Weston Wilson, like, he got KO'd in his last fight. The only thing he's got going for him is his ground game, but that's not that good either.
He has a good ground game, but he trains with Wonder Boy. Yeah. So, I mean, what does that really mean there?
Driving kids around in a van.
As one famous man once said. I think that I would also have to agree, Weston Wilson, I think, gets knocked out here as well. Gene Silva seems to have a very similar fighting style and background to Joe Anderson Brito, who knocked out Weston Wilson in the previous fight. So I just don't see this going any differently, and I just think that Weston Wilson's a little bit older and he's kind of on his way out.
They also have Gene Silva as a minus 800 favorite in this fight. Like, do not bet on this fight. Yeah. Do not bet on this fight.
So that's the thing to note as well. When we're giving you these picks, we're going to preface it by saying who we have, and we're also going to go ahead and give some warnings where we're giving you some bets. We obviously don't know everything. Nobody does. But we're going to try to do our best to tell you which ones that are worth staying away from, because while we are pretty confident with Weston Wilson, it doesn't make sense to put $800 on the line on a minus 800, or to put that in your parlay. If you take an underdog and add him in there, it might go up plus like $30. It's just, it's not worth it. If you were doing a full card parlay for whatever reason, if you're out of your mind, then maybe I would add him in that. But otherwise, I would probably just leave him out. That's just simply who we think is going to win. On to the next one, we have Farid Basharat and Taylor Lapis. I'm going to be honest, before this card and breaking this down, I didn't even realize that there were 2 Basharats. I thought that they were the same guy both times. But with that being said, I'm going to have to go with Basharat. And my reasoning with that is he's looked pretty solid. He has good wrestling. And Taylor Lapis is French.
Yeah, but I don't feel like those fighters coming from France really have the dog in them. Like
Benoit Saint Denis is the exception.
Yeah, of course. And don't even get me started with Cyril Gane. Yeah, but I'm gonna have to take Farid Basharat as well. Him and his brother are coming up in the UFC. They've got the momentum. I don't think Lapis is gonna be able to deal with Basharat's wrestling. He got controlled 7 minutes in his last fight, even though he won. But I just think Basharat's the better wrestler in this one.
One thing I would also be careful with betting this fight is that this is not the first time that we've seen the UFC with two brothers, especially two undefeated brothers coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And it just doesn't ever really seem like the brother thing plays out in the UFC. I mean, Nick Diaz and Nate Diaz, obviously two legends. But you look at Kyle Dawkins, Chris Dawkins, where are those guys now? Yeah. You look at the Bomb Fiend brothers. those guys had all the hype in the world, minus 600 favorites, finished by Nicholas Dalby. So I still would say Farid Basharat gets this done, but I would not hammer Farid Basharat for all his fights coming up just because he's undefeated. I mean, they could be an exception, but the brothers in the UFC just kind of have a track record of letting us down. So I would be mindful of that.
All right, next up we've got Marcus McGee versus Gaston Banos, and we're riding with McGee here. McGee's on a roll, getting these finishes. He's strong. He's got that ground game. He's got the power. Banos, he does have pretty good kicks. That might pose an issue for McGee, but I don't think it's going to matter in the end. Banos wasn't that good in Bellator. He's probably not going to be that good in the UFC. He isn't that good in the UFC. The UFC want McGee to win. He's got all the hype right now. We're going to have to slam the McGee money line.
I'm going with McGee as well. Honestly, I would rate this as the lock of the entire card. Marcus McGee, he has 2 fights in the UFC, but he's looked phenomenal in his first 2 fights, and I think the UFC is really behind this guy. I actually saw him with his first fight. In his post-fight interview, they had said something really interesting to me. They had made a comment about how he had a large social following, and I actually went back and forth with my dad saying, who's this guy? He doesn't have a large social following. I went to his Instagram. He had about 3,000 followers, and literally within 24 hours, he went from 3 to 15,000. And when in the grand scheme of things, that isn't a lot. That goes to show that within that time, every time this guy fights, he's getting more eyeballs on him, and the UFC realizes that too. I think that this is honestly a layup for Marcus McGee. He's 33 years old. He's explosive. And, he realizes that if he wants to make something happen with his new UFC career, that it's going to have to be soon. And I think he's going to go guns blazing in here. That is my lock of this card, Marcus McGee. Coming up next with Matthew Semelsberger and Preston Parsons. At first, when we were going over this and researching it, we were kind of skeptical about this. We almost wanted to preface this by saying this is kind of a pick'em fight. Because Matthew Semelsberger has kind of been a letdown. He hasn't really... He's the king of knocking people down and not finishing the fight.
Exactly.
He had Medic hurt really bad, and then Medic came back and messed up our parlay on that card. But that's another story for another day. This was a toss-up for me until I saw that he was going against Preston Pressure Parsons. So with that being said, I'm going Matthew Semelsberger, Semi the Jedi. I think he's got something to prove coming into this fight, and I don't think that the pressure is going to get to him.
Yeah, I don't really like betting on this fight, but I'm going to have to take Semi the Jedi here. He's got the power. I feel like his fight IQ is pretty bad, but I honestly don't think that Preston Parsons is good enough to capitalize on that in this fight. So up next we have Andre Arlovski versus Waldo Cortez Acosta, and this is going to be a brutal KO by Acosta here. Arlovski is he was doing pretty good before, I feel like, as like an older guy, but now he's done. He just got knocked out by Don'Tale Mayes. Like, if you get knocked out by Don'Tale Mayes, your future is not bright. So I think this might be the end of Andre Arlovski's career here. He won't be able to deal with the power of Waldo Acosta.
Andre Arlovski, he was doing pretty well these last couple years. You know, he was going against the Oven St. Preux, the Chase Shermans, the Rogerio de Lima Silva, the Blagoy Ivanov, and he was doing pretty well against those fighters. But I just think Waldo Cortez Acosta, he's much taller, he's much younger. I think he has much more power, and I just don't think Arlovski's chin is all there. I think that the UFC is giving this as his retirement fight, and they want to open the door and kiss him goodbye. So I'm going with Waldo as well. That's another one. This is definitely more safe to bet, I think, than John Silva, because while it is a pretty big money line, he is minus 650, but I think this is much more likely. Andre Arlovski's not known for knocking people out, especially not at 44 years old, so that's pretty safe. Up next, Phil Hawes and Bruno Ferrera. So I think that this honestly isn't even a debate whether or not Phil Hawes is going out in this fight. He has no chin anymore. Honestly, I can't remember when he did have a chin. I've been watching the UFC now for 4 years, and I can't remember a fight I've seen him win, let alone not get knocked out. And I think that Bruno Ferrera proved something when he caught RoboCop with that jab that knocked him out. Now, granted, that's the one he knocked him out and then got knocked out in the next, but I just don't see Phil Hawes getting it done here. He's older. He doesn't have the chin anymore. And I just think that the UFC is basically using him as a stepping stone at this point. They're trying to build people out of him. So I would go ahead and slam Bruno Ferrera in this fight.
Yeah, like you were saying, I feel like that win he got over RoboCop, also known as Obama, I feel like that win was really good. Phil Hawes is Phil No Hype Hawes, Phil No Chin Hawes. He's going out in this one. The hooks of Ferrera is going to be that's going to be the main thing that does the most damage to Phil Hawes. I feel like they've got Ferrera as a minus 125. I like those odds. I mean, I don't really see betting on Phil Hawes here. It's not going to be pretty for him.
I agree with that as well. Next up, we have Ricky Simone and Mario Bautista. Ricky Simone here, I'm going to have to say that he has an urge to come back. I think he got his first taste at the spotlight with the 5-round main event. Granted, I believe he actually did a lot better than I thought he was going to do against Song Yadong. He did get knocked out towards the end, but he hung in there for a long time, and I think that he gained a lot of experience, and he's got a chip on his shoulder to come back now. And I'm just not overly impressed with Mario Bautista. I can't really think of anything. He had a really close fight against Damon Blackshear on a week's notice, so I just don't see him doing very well against a full camp Ricky Simone here. Ricky Simone is thicker. He's got more strength. I think he's got better striking. Mario Bautista may have the speed advantage with the striking, but I just think that Ricky Simone has heavier hands, and he's going to be able to get off the ground if he gets taken down here.
Yeah, I feel like this is going to be a really good technical striking match with some wrestling mixed in here and there. I'm going to take Ricky Simone as well. I feel like the loss to Song Yadong really doesn't matter that much in this fight. Song Yadong is really good. He's a really good fighter. I feel like also Ricky Simone has been tested. He's beat the better guys. He's been 5 rounds. And I think he's going to use that experience to take out Mario Bautista in a decision in this one. We've got Ricky Simone.
So before we go any further in this, I want to go ahead and give you guys our parlay for the week, if you will. We're going to slam Marcus McGee, Bruno Ferrera, and Ricky Simone. That 3-leg is plus 285. I think that's probably the safest here.
Yeah.
Like we said, betting the big money on these fights, I guess you could say those are more of locks, but it just doesn't make sense to put that much money in those parlays. Ricky Simone, Ferrera, and Marcus McGee are all relatively lower odds. They're under 300, so adding all three of those together, like I said, plus 285, I think for a 3-leg, that's great money. Personally, that's what I'm gonna be hammering for this week.
Yeah, I like that parlay as well. It's safe. I feel like the only fight on there I would be a little nervous about is the Mario Bautista, Ricky Simone, but I don't see him winning that at all, to be honest.
So up next, Jim Miller and Gabriel Benitez. I think that Jim Miller is going to get it done, and I think he's going to get it done early. Jim Miller has been proving that in his older years, he still has that power, he still has that drive, and I think because with UFC 300 right around the corner, Jim Miller is going to want to get in and get out of there taking the least amount of damage possible so that he's available for UFC 300 to complete the being at UFC 100, 200, and 300 consecutive events. And I'm just not really sold on Gabriel Benitez. I mean, he was getting knocked out at featherweight by Onama, and he got a layup with Charlie Ontiveros, and he's coming up in weight. I think this is a big man's division, and Jim Miller's the bigger man with more experience here. I think that he's gonna get the finish early on in this fight. I'm taking Jim Miller.
Yeah, we've seen Benitez's chin get tested before. We know Jim Miller has knockout power. He's on a roll. He's got the momentum on his side. Like you said, UFC 300's around the corner. He's probably going to look to retire at that card for one last fight. We got to take Jim Miller. Up next, we have Matheus Nicolau versus Manel Kape. We're going Manel Kape in this one. He's showed improvements since the last fight. I really don't think he should have lost that fight, to be honest. That was a really close fight. I feel like Manel Kape has shown that he's the better fighter through his recent fights. I really don't believe that Nicolau has the dog in him. I really don't think so. He's going to get tested in this fight. It's probably going to go to decision. Manel Kape's going to jab. He's going to keep the pressure on him. I don't think Nicolau is going to be able to keep up with that.
Adding on to that, Manel Kape, I believe, has been the more improved fighter over between the two of them over the last one. And I think that Manel Kape has more at stake here. I think that he's on a roll. I think he really, really, really wants that fight with Kai Kara-France, and he's not going to get given that if he loses here. So I think that he's going in there hungry. He wants Kara-France, and he wants Pantoja afterwards. I think he's coming in here with something to prove. He's already lost to this guy. He went to decision last time. He wants to be the future world champion. I'm going to go ahead and also agree with going Manel Kape here. And then last but not least, we have Johnny Walker versus Barnowl. We're going to go and we're going to hammer Johnny Walker here. He's plus 325 at the time of recording this. I just think that he has more to prove here, and that Barnowl is going to be much more emotional coming into this fight. He didn't get a title shot off of Anthony Smith. I can't believe I forgot that. He didn't get the title shot off of him. He only got given the title shot off of Jan once Yuri got injured. That was draw. He comes back after 10 months being gone, and it gets stopped within the first round. I think that he's pissed off. I was watching his video on ESPN earlier where he was pissed off, and he was saying he's been training twice as hard now because he wants to move Johnny Walker out of his way for wasting his time and this and that. And I think that if he's going in there with a cloudy mind and he's really that pissed off, I think that Johnny Walker is going to be able to use his weird style. And Johnny Walker has good cardio as well. He went and was looking pretty good into the later bit of third round against Anthony Smith. I know that's Anthony Smith. There's a huge asterisk on that comment that I just made. But I do think that he's got at least 3 rounds in him of explosiveness. And we haven't really seen Johnny Walker struggle on the ground with anybody. He's a black belt. He's got good power. He's got good striking. He is a little bit chinny, I'll say that. But who has who has Magomed Ankalaev knocked out is really my thing.
Yeah, he's not known for his power.
I would say that this is a close fight. It's not a minus 500 versus plus 325 fight, but I'm glad it's that way because I'm going to hammer Johnny Walker, and that's a big payday in my opinion.
Yeah, I was just going to add on to what you were saying about Barn Owl being angry and emotional. I feel like that is not the mindset you want to be in when you're fighting like a crazy fighter like Johnny Walker. He's going to be throwing those flying knees, spinning stuff, faking stuff. Like, I feel like Ankalaev is not going to be in the right mindset when he goes in there, and he's going to get caught by one of those crazy moves that Johnny Walker's known for. And we are going to capitalize on these odds. Plus 325 sounds like money in the bank.
I think that this is probably the best case scenario for cards starting off the year. We were getting a little more rough towards the end of the year. 296 was a flop, and Beneil Dariush versus Arman Sarukian was the worst betting night of my life.
Yeah.
I just think that this is honestly kind of a gift card. I think that I can't see any of these fights really going any other way, and I'm just extremely confident in all of these. So to recap for you guys once again, that 3-leg parlay that we're going to be giving you guys for free this week is Bruno Ferrera, Marcus McGee, Ricky Simone. That's plus 285. I would go ahead and lock that in right now before the odds change, before the odds makers go ahead and wake up and get some sense and go, why did we have the lines like this? Let's juice those a little bit. Lock that in now. Good luck on Saturday, you guys. We'll see you after the card.